next installment of The Train Vicar.
After our time in Switzerland, I'm back in New Zealand again. But that's not the end of all things Switzerland. I'll use some of the videos I took there in future installments of this channel. Now, this installment of the Train Vicar will be a bit different. So I won't be discussing a railway topic and then using it as a spiritual example. Rather, I'll reflect about some of the things I saw in Switzerland. In my videos, I've praised Swiss railways, and they're certainly good. They also have shaped the country in a positive way, I think. For example, the Swiss city streets are a lot more pleasant than those in many other countries. In Switzerland, most city streets are quiet and safe, nevertheless well connected to both public and private transport. But as I was riding Swiss public transport, I could not help but wonder whether this great transport system made people happy. I noticed the many people who went to extreme lengths to express their identity in some way, with very distinct clothes, hairstyles, and tattoos. Why did they feel the need to do that? The Swiss normally rate quite highly in happiness surveys, but they also have high rates of mental health issues and probably a sense of disillusionment. Drug use is also quite high in Switzerland. That is true for hard drugs, but is quite obvious in the case of cannabis. That waft is quite noticeable, certainly more than in New Zealand. Why do the Swiss feel the need to medicate so much? And then, just as in many other European countries, some people feel the need to escape reality by becoming violent around football matches and shutting down stations and their surroundings. What is all that about? Even people who seem to be quite happy often long to break free from what they feel is the restrictive life in Switzerland. What's happening there? Well, here I'm getting into psychological guessing a bit, but I think I can understand the Swiss at least in two aspects. One is a deep-seated anti-authoritarian mindset. After all, the Swiss were founded in a rebellion against the empires and other authorities in Europe. With such a mindset, it can be hard to live in such a regulated society as Switzerland. Well, I can understand that sentiment. I'm also very sensitive to any use of power, but even more so to the abuse of power. And so, as a vicar, one of the things that is quite difficult for me is that I'm supposed to be obedient to the bishop. Now, I can always temper that by referring to my own conscience and to the word of God. So it's not total obedience, which gives me some freedom. The second aspect is a traditional Swiss longing for remoteness. This is a characteristic of a mountain people and, for example, well illustrated in the story of Heidi. With Switzerland becoming more and more crowded, many Swiss people long for wide open spaces. That's why many of them are fascinated by New Zealand. A few people actually told me that this year in Switzerland. I can understand that. I also have found much joy in the vast New Zealand mountains. Those are some of the things that affect people even in a country with a relatively good political system where people do feel included and a great public transport system through which people feel connected. I want to raise another point, and that is that in their prosperity, the Swiss have moved away from God and the church, and through that have lost a sense of direction. Now, just as an example, if you look at the traditional houses, quite a few have got some messages on them, and they normally refer to God. Here's one: everything depends on God's blessing. Or, where God does not give favor to the house, the people travail in vain. Or, the works of men sink, as we can see, but God's works endure forever. Here, I am a guest on earth. Faith was once very important in Switzerland. Now it seems to be more a cultural relic. In a sense, that's not surprising. Many of the churches offer a very insipid version of Christianity, and the church services often lack depth. In their desire to be relevant, Swiss churches have become just another offering in a consumer culture. Little meaning and commitment can be found in those churches. Now, I have to say that this church in Neuenig was something of an exception. Still, overall, even though the bells ring constantly in Switzerland, churches are pretty much disregarded in Switzerland. But the church could give meaning and identity to so many Swiss people. It could bring thankfulness together with care for others. In the history of Israel, the people often turned away from God in times of prosperity. Maybe something similar is happening in Switzerland. But it is also in times of prosperity and so many good things that God can give direction and hope and deep fulfillment.